Okay, today we're going to move to another part of the naming flowchart. So remember we did binary ionic compounds with a fixed charge, and we did binary ionic compounds with a variable charge in your pink packet. And you should turn in your pink packet to your list of polyatomic ions. So we're still going to start at this first box. It says, does the compound start with H+? Remember, that would mean that H was in the very first position. If this is not the case, H is not in the very first position. Then the next box says, is this compound binary? Well, we've got calcium, we've got carbon, and we've got oxygen. That's not 2, so the answer to that is going to be no. If we were playing chutes and ladders, we would be going way down like this. Okay, we're going to go way down our arrow to the box that says, then it is ternary. Identify the polyatomic ion. Is the polyatomic ion a negative ion or a positive ion or both? Well, let's look at our list of polyatomic ions. What's your only positive polyatomic ion? Ammonium. So as soon as you say, well, that's not ammonium, what you can do is you can pull off the cation. In this case, the cation is calcium. So if the compound does not start with NH4, then the first element is your cation. It's going to be a metal. So if it doesn't start with NH4, we're going to pull off that first element. That's going to be our first name. Everything after it is going to be what's called a polyatomic ion, which we learned about the first day. So now you can look in your list of polyatomic ions. Remember, if you're looking how to look for this, you're going to say, well, my charges march inward starting at nitrogen. So nitrogen's a -1, and the carbon and oxygen polyatomic ions are a -2. So look in your -2 section and look for CO3. What is CO3's name? Carbonate. So we're down here, and we say that it has a negative ion here. Now it's going to ask, does the metal have a variable charge? Is calcium a variable charge metal? It is not. It is not in our variable charge metal box. So see, it'll tell you to name the cation, then name the polyatomic ion. So the cation here is calcium. And then we're going to name the polyatomic ion, which is carbonate. The name of this compound is calcium carbonate. This does not start with H+. It is not binary. It's ternary. We're going to look and say, does it start with NH4? The answer is no. So then I know the first metal element is going to be my cation. That's going to be my first name. Everything after it is going to be my polyatomic ion. Remember, the nitrogen and oxygen polyatomic ions have a charge of -1. So look in your list of polyatomic ions. What is the name of NO3? Nitrate. So that is a negative ion. Does potassium have a variable charge? Does not. So we're going to name him potassium nitrate. Now you're going to run into compounds that have parentheses in them. The parentheses, believe it or not, make our job easier because the polyatomic ion is inside the parentheses. So whenever you see parentheses, you're like, oh, I already know what my polyatomic ion is. It's inside of there. So my polyatomic ion is OH. What's OH's name? Hydroxide. So it is a ternary compound. It has a negative polyatomic ion. Magnesium does not have a variable charge. He's not in our variable charge metals box. So we're just going to name him with naming the cation and then the polyatomic ion. So he is magnesium hydroxide. Does not start with H+. It is not binary, therefore it is ternary. We're going to identify the polyatomic ion. Remember, the first thing we're going to do is look and see, does it start with NH4? This time we're going to say yes. So this is a positive ion. And then it says name the polyatomic ion stem of anion in IDE. So the polyatomic ion is ammonium. And then we're going to change the ending to IDE, chloride. Now, if it was something where let's check this out. You look down, you saw it was ternary. It's actually got 4 elements. That's fine too. It's still ternary. Ternary means more than binary. You're going to say this is the polyatomic ion ammonium, but then I also have another polyatomic ion there. So this is the case where it says both names. So this one, it's going to be ammonium. What's CN?
Cyanide.
Cyanide. So now think about that. You guys have heard of cyanide before, haven't you? So now you know what cyanide is. Cyanide is a polyatomic ion with carbon and nitrogen bonded together. But carbon, in this particular case, does not get the 4 bonds it wants to have. Carbon has 4 valence electrons. He wants to have 8. So he'd love to share 4 more with somebody else and have 8 bonds and 8 valence electrons and 4 covalent bonds. That's what he wants. But when it comes to cyanide, he doesn't get to have the 8 that he wants. That's why cyanide is pretty reactive and pretty dangerous. Does anybody know another carbon compound that has carbon in it? Carbon monoxide. He said that's another compound where carbon doesn't get to have the 4 bonds that he wants to have. So that's why carbon monoxide is super reactive and super dangerous. It's definitely ternary. It doesn't start with ammonium, so we can pull off this first element. That's his first name. That first metal is the cation. So his first name is aluminum. Now, remember I told you that parentheses are actually our friend because the polyatomic ion is right inside there. What's the name of this polyatomic ion? Acetate. So this is called aluminum acetate. So let's add ourselves a cautionary tale here. If you start getting the idea to give him like 3 or 4 names, like I'm going to see some people be like, oh, aluminum dicarbide, trihydrogen oxide. If you start giving him a bunch of names, stop yourself. All of our compounds are only going to have a first name and a last name. Some of the guys who have variable charge metal will have those middle initials, which will be our Roman numerals. That's what we're going to do next. Okay, we're going to start at the beginning. It doesn't start with H+. It is not binary. It is ternary. The polyatomic ion is not ammonium, so we're going to pull off that first element. That's our cation. The rest of it is our polyatomic ion, which we can name right now. What's the name of SO4? Sulfate. Now we have to ask, does this metal have a variable charge? Check your variable charge metal box. Is it a variable charge metal? The answer is yes. So we can either do the algebra like we did yesterday, where we don't know what X is, but we do know what the charge on sulfate is. What's the charge on sulfate? -2. So X in this case is going to be +2. So this is iron 2 sulfate. You don't have to do the algebra if it's easier for you to just look at it by inspection and say, well, I know sulfate's a -2 in back, so iron's got to be a +2 in front. Same thing, we know it's ternary, so we know we're down here. This is the part we're doing today, is all the way down at the bottom here. So we know it's ternary, and we know that lead does have a variable charge, so we got to figure out what it is. So we, again, figure out that it doesn't start with ammonium. So we know that our cation is lead. We don't know what the charge is on it yet. What is the name of the polyatomic ion in parentheses? Tia? Bicarbonate. So we need to figure out, what's the charge on bicarbonate? -1. So can you guys tell right away, what is the charge on lead? It is +2. So this is lead 2 bicarbonate. Thiocyanide. It is a -1. So what does the charge on gold have to be? Gold 1 thiocyanide. What do you guys think? Can you do this? I mean, auric thiocyanide would be that. This would be plumbous bicarbonate. This would be ferrous.